Major funding for KPBS Evening Edition has been made possible in part by Anderson Plumbing, Heating and Air, proud to support the mission of KPBS and privileged to serve San Diego clients. Anderson Plumbing, Heating and Air, helping homeowners maintain drain, heating, and cooling systems since 1978. And by the Conrad Prebys Foundation, Darlene Marco Shiley, and by the following. And by viewers like you. Thank you.
Good evening. It's Tuesday, April 6th. Thanks for joining us. I'm Maya Trabulsi. Major developments today when it comes to returning to normalcy in California. Governor Gavin Newsom announcing a target date of June 15th to throw out the color-coded tier system and fully reopen the state. Here in San Diego County, more immediate changes are on the way as we move into the orange tier tomorrow. Here's KPBS reporter Matt Hoffman.
We'll be getting rid of the blueprint as you know it today.
The state's color-coded tier system will be gone in 10 weeks, and the governor says nearly all coronavirus restrictions will be lifted statewide.
We can confidently say by June 15th that we can start to open up as business as usual, subject to ongoing mask wearing and ongoing vigilance.
Newsom says case rates and hospitalizations have been consistently low, and demand for vaccinations is still incredibly high.
We have administered more doses than all but 5 nations in the world.
In total, more than 20 million doses have gone into Californians' arms, and 70% of older residents are now vaccinated. State officials say if all goes well, on June 15th, most businesses can reopen with, quote, common sense risk reduction measures. Newsom says the state's mask mandate is not going anywhere anytime soon, but not everything is being cleared to reopen. Large outdoor and indoor events like music festivals are not returning come summer, and officials say through October, conventions cannot exceed 5,000 guests unless they can prove that everyone is vaccinated or recently tested negative.
Our numbers are looking good, so I think it is the appropriate time, but we just cannot let up.
The tier system is still here for now, and we've officially landed in the less restrictive orange tier. That means capacity is increasing indoors for a lot of businesses, including restaurants, movie theaters, churches, museums, and breweries. Bars that don't serve food can now move outdoors. Live events, amusement parks, and retail stores are also seeing increased capacity. Going to the orange tier also means more fans inside the stands at Petco Park. While this is certainly good news for businesses, the pandemic is not over and San Diegans are still dying.
I don't want people to give up or think, oh, we have this now that we're in orange tier. We don't have to do any of these things anymore.
County health officials can choose to be more restrictive, but right now, Dr. Wooten says she isn't foreseeing any new restrictions and is actually lifting a curfew imposed last year on bars and restaurants.
This has been in effect since July of last year, a 10 p.m. curfew. We will lift that effective tomorrow, allowing those entities to resume their normal operations.
County Supervisor Nathan Fletcher says there has been a slight uptick in cases recently, but
because we made the decision early and to vaccinate seniors and then move into those with underlying health conditions, the threat or risk of overwhelming the healthcare system is much less. And so a slight uptick in cases is not a cause for alarm.
Officials say vaccine supplies are increasing and they will need it. Next week, all Californians over 16 years old become eligible for a vaccination. Matt Hoffman, KPBS News.
San Diego Unified School District expects about half of its students to return to in-person instruction next week, but those numbers could change as more parents feel comfortable sending their children to school. KPBS education reporter Joe Hong has the latest as the county's largest district prepares to reopen campuses.
Last month, San Diego Unified distributed parent surveys to gauge how many students would return to in-person learning on April 12th. So far, about 2/3 of parents have responded to the survey. Among those parents, nearly 3/4 are comfortable sending their students back to campuses. Richard Barrera is the president of the San Diego Unified School Board.
We're also ready for, surprises, next week. We may have students show up, that we weren't expecting, and we may have students who signed up to be in person, not show up. So, the schools are going to be ready for, for whoever shows up.
Getting an accurate number of returning students will be important for determining how many days a week students can be on campus. If a high number of students want to come back, social distancing rules require they be split into 2 smaller groups, with each group on campus twice a week. But if fewer students return, they can be in the classroom up to 4 days a week.
Right now, it looks like about 3/4 of our schools will be offering 4 days. And the remainder of our schools will either be at 2 days or they're a combination of, there may be some grade levels at the school that are at 4 days and other grade levels are at 2 days.
Brewer said district officials will try their best to be flexible if more students decide to come back in the coming weeks or months. But if on April 12th, a particular school allows 4 days of instruction per week, the district does not plan to reduce the number of in-person days at that school to accommodate more students.
We want to make that happen, but if that creates, a real, challenge space-wise, we do not want to move from 4 days to 2 days.
Brewer said principals are working to get all parents to respond to the survey, but officials will assume that parents who don't respond to the survey are deciding to keep their students at home. Joe Hong, KPBS News.
UC San Diego plans to return to normal this fall. Nearly all classes are being scheduled as in-person with regular occupancy. The university says it will continue with vaccinations, symptom screening, testing, contact tracing, and cleaning services. The national expectation is that 90% of adults will be vaccinated before the end of August. President Biden announced today that all adults will be eligible for a coronavirus vaccine by April 19th. That's 2 weeks sooner than the original plan of May 1st. Nadia Romero has the latest from Washington.
Hi, how are you?
At a Virginia vaccination site, President Joe Biden touting his administration's efforts to get more shots in arms sooner than promised.
I think if everyone continues down the road we're on now, it will be behind us, but it's not over yet.
The president pointing multiple reasons for the accelerated effort, including supply, mass vaccination sites, and an additional 23,000 pharmacies in the federal pharmacy vaccination program.
We are at a point with the supply we have available, the number of vaccines, vaccination sites, vaccinators, where we believe everybody in the country should be eligible, can get in line.
The U.S. now the first country to administer 150 million shots with a special emphasis on the most vulnerable. The announcement couldn't come sooner. A highly contagious COVID-19 variant first identified in the U.K. has now been reported in every state in the U.S. And experts are concerned spreading variants could send cases surging.
We have to ramp up a whole-of-government approach that rallies the whole country and puts us on a war footing to truly beat this virus.
All this while there are still concerns about the equitable distribution of the vaccine, with barriers to access for Black and Latino communities disproportionately affected by the virus. In Washington, I'm Nadia Romero.
Everyone who gets a COVID shot gets a card as proof of their vaccination. Well, coming up, what health experts advise that you do with it and how it could be used in the future. Today is Election Day in the 79th Assembly District special election. KPBS reporter Max Rivlin-Nadler tells us we should know soon whether there's a clear winner or if we'll be heading to a June runoff.
More than 50,000 voters cast ballots by mail before Election Day, after 300,000 were sent out to every registered voter in the 79th District. The race will decide who will take the seat of former Assemblymember Shirley Weber, who was appointed as California's Secretary of State. At 51 polling sites on Tuesday, in-person voting was a rare sight. By 1 p.m., only 300 people had chosen to vote in person. Some polling locations were changed because of new uses for spaces, as compared to the November general election. At Viejas Arena on the SDSU campus, for instance, a last-minute change moved the polling site into a storage closet, filled with the arena's basketball hoops, because the arena itself is being used as a vaccination site. Interim Registrar of Voters Cynthia Paz said that the amount of votes already received before Election Day has set a record for voters in an Assembly District special election.
We had the 80th Assembly District special election in 2013, which was a 15% turnout. So coming into Election Day, we were already at 17%, so we passed that up.
The special election is between 5 candidates, 4 Democrats and 1 Republican in this heavily Democratic district. The two leading fundraisers were Akilah Weber, who's a doctor, La Mesa City Council member and daughter of the district's former assembly member, and Leticia Munguia, a labor organizer. If any candidate gets more than 50% of the vote, they'll win outright. However, if no candidate gets a majority, the top two will move to a runoff on June 8th. Initial results are expected shortly after 8 p.m. tonight, with certification of the election to be done quickly, in just 2 weeks, to ensure enough time to campaign for the possible runoff. Max Rivlin-Adler, KPBS News.
A 2020 tax measure to fund an expansion of the San Diego Convention Center has been in limbo for more than a year. KPBS Metro reporter Andrew Bowen says the City Council voted 6-3 today to rescue it.
Could the decade-plus quest to expand the convention center soon be over? In March 2020, the Citizens Initiative Measure C won overwhelming support from San Diego voters, but it fell just shy of the two-thirds majority that special taxes have historically needed in California. The measure increases the city's hotel room tax to fund an expanded convention center, road repair, and services and housing for the homeless. City council members on Tuesday voted to declare the measure approved, based on recent court decisions finding special taxes only need a simple majority if they're proposed via a citizens initiative. Measure C supporters say it will speed up the city's economic recovery.
And this is a great way for a lot of us employees to be able to pick up extra hours. I'm pretty sure that I speak for a lot of my coworkers and myself when I say that we're very eager and very excited to get back to work.
Opponents of Tuesday's action point out the city's own ballot materials told voters Measure C needed a two-thirds majority to pass.
If you vote to change the threshold 1 year after voters have made their decision, no matter how close it may have been, you are betraying the democratic principles you swore to uphold. You'll be proving that you do not listen, you do not respect, and you do not care about the voice of the voters.
San Diego will now ask a judge to validate its decision. If and when that happens, the city can start collecting the extra taxes from San Diego hotels. Andrew Bowen, KPBS News.
The San Diego Convention Center is nearing capacity as a temporary shelter for migrant children. Now, Long Beach could step in to help. The city may soon open up its own convention center to help alleviate overcrowding in border facilities. The Long Beach City Council is meeting to vote on whether to go ahead with the plan. Their convention center would hold up to 1,000 kids for 3 to 4 months.
So it's a way to do something very humanely with a lot of kindness, compassion.
Making sure that those unaccompanied minors, if they have a parent or a relative who's undocumented, that parent or relative can actually be reunited with that kid. The Trump administration denied that right.
The federal government has asked communities across the U.S. to help shelter children being housed in overcrowded Border Patrol facilities. Today, the Los Angeles County Board of Supervisors voted to take steps to find local relatives of those kids and to provide medical and mental health support. Use of force is examined during the trial of Derek Chauvin as a jury considers the former officer's actions during the arrest of George Floyd. Camila Bernal is in Minneapolis with today's highlights.
Is this a use of force?
Yes, sir.
Police Lieutenant Johnny Mercil, who trained Derek Chauvin on use of force techniques, says officers should use the lowest level of force when making an arrest. However,
knee on the neck would be something that does happen in use of force.
The subject was under control and handcuffed. Would this be authorized?
I would say no.
The defense argues Chauvin's actions were reasonable.
Does this appear to be a neck restraint?
No, sir.
Lieutenant Mercil testifying officers are trained to restrain suspects, even after they lose consciousness.
After a person has been rendered unconscious using a neck restraint, is it possible for them to continue to fight after they come back to consciousness?
It is possible, yes.
Also testifying, the training coordinator for the police department's crisis intervention program, who says it's the officer's duty to de-escalate situations.
We have the time to slow things down and reevaluate, reassess.
The defense says witnesses watching an arrest can contribute to a crisis and ultimately impact what an officer does.
Sometimes that the public doesn't understand that police actions can look really bad.
That's correct, sir, yes.
Right. And and but they still may be lawful even if they look bad, right?
Yes, sir.
In Minneapolis, Camila Bernal, KPBS News.
Today, the San Diego County Board of Supervisors voted to support state and federal gun safety reforms, including stronger background checks. The 3-2 decision amends the county's legislative program, letting it support a House bill that would close a private sales loophole. Supervisor Tara Lawson-Reamer proposed the amendment change. Supervisors Joel Anderson and Jim Desmond voted no. South Bay officials are running out of patience over the continued cross-border flow of sewage-tainted water. Here's KPBS environment reporter Eric Anderson.
The pollution warning signs have been up most of the year in Imperial Beach. Last week, pollution flowed north to Coronado, forcing beach closures there. Imperial Beach Mayor Serge Dedina is fed up.
Mexico is still using the Tijuana River as an open sewer, and the residents of San Diego, IB, and Coronado are suffering as a result.
Dedina says the cross-border flows are still happening even in dry weather.
We have anywhere from 10 to 25 million gallons a day flowing into the ocean. What's really clear is that the pollution levels are off the charts. So if you start seeing the county does daily testing, which we're thankful for, the pollution levels are extraordinarily high, all the way from northern Baja all the way to Imperial Beach.
This was all supposed to be getting better. The federal government approved $300 million to address the problem last year, but the EPA still hasn't decided how or when to spend the money. The Surfrider Foundation's Gabriela Torres says legal action is waiting if there's no concrete progress by midsummer.
Our lawsuit is on a 12-month stay, which started last July. So in July, the lawsuit will be opening up again.
Surfrider, the state, the port, and several municipalities put their lawsuits on hold because it looked like there was movement last year in the effort to stop the cross-border flows. Eric Anderson, KPBS News.
Onshore flow with us for the entire week, and that onshore flow will strengthen Wednesday night and into Thursday morning. Temperature-wise, well, very little temperature change here the next few days, and our dry pattern does continue. So let's take a look at our weather for the overnight hours. We'll see the clouds again with that onshore flow. Oceanside 51, San Diego 58. We'll cool it down into the 40s here in Escondido and Ramona. Borrego Springs tonight's low 63. Campos down to about 46. Wednesday, high pressure building over the southwest, very warm in the interior, and we'll be comfortable here closer to the coast. As we take a look at our temperatures, near 70 in Oceanside, 71 San Diego. Warmer inland though, look at that. El Cajon 87, Ramona at 83. Any clouds in the morning melting away with sunshine. Borrego Springs heating up to 96, a hot day here, and at Mount Laguna we're at 65. Well, we still have that ridge in control here through Thursday, and it's hot in the desert areas, more comfortable towards the coast. There you can see our temperatures really not changing much with our onshore flow, morning clouds and some fog giving way to sunshine. Inland areas, temperatures warm Wednesday, they're not quite as warm for the rest of the week, but still pretty nice with some clouds giving way to sunshine. Up in the mountains, temperatures cooling off just a little bit, but not by much. Some wind could be an issue at times, especially into Thursday. And as we check out the deserts, well, it's hot and it's dry. And you can see it'll be breezy here Thursday, and it looks hot into the weekend with temperatures staying in the mid-90s. And for KPBS News, I'm meteorologist Mark Mancuso.
The IRS is sending more money to people who were shortchanged in their original stimulus payments. The so-called plus-up payments are going to people whose 2020 tax returns show they are owed more money. That's because initial payments were based on 2018 or 2019 returns. If you earned less money or added a child to your family in 2020, you could be getting more money back from the IRS. The pandemic has hit the restaurant industry very hard. More than 100,000 restaurants in the U.S. have closed, and those that survived say they are desperate for the money in President Biden's stimulus package. Vanessa Yurkovich has more.
every single month, at the end of the month, it's like, hey, we made it another month.
I mean, it's pretty extraordinary to have made it this far.
I feel so unbelievably lucky to be standing on this side of it.
3 restaurant owners in New York, Chicago, and Los Angeles have made it through the pandemic so far, something 110,000 other restaurants can't say. But to keep their doors open, they will need access to the new Restaurant Revitalization Fund, part of the $1.9 trillion stimulus bill.
How critical do you feel like this grant is for you?
I won't survive without this grant.
Amanda Cohen has owned Dirt Candy in New York's Lower East Side for 13 years. 2 PPP loans later, she's just hanging on.
What's business like these days?
Business is really up and down. You know, we'll do 6 covers a night, maybe 8 covers.
So what does 6 to 8 covers a day get you?
Nowhere.
Which is why the $28.6 billion restaurant fund run by the Small Business Administration is paramount. Unlike a PPP loan, this grant covers more expenses and doesn't have to be paid back. The SBA says it could go live this month, but offers no exact date.
It's extremely important for us comes in a timely fashion.
Joe Frillman says the grant money would fund his Chicago restaurant till October. Without it, he makes it to May. Some states have lifted indoor dining restrictions, but several major cities like Chicago still have them in place.
The physical limitations of this space and this restaurant, we're actually operating still only at about 25% capacity from what we can do. It's really been a strain in terms of the amount of revenue that we can pull off.
Good morning. Good morning.
At the start of 2020, Lynn Ta owned 2 restaurants in Los Angeles. Today, she's working to save her remaining 1.
Oh, it's tough because it's like choosing between your children. Which one are you going to save?
Even after closing 1 restaurant, she has mounting debt and doesn't think the grant will be enough for all her expenses. But it could help bring back some of the nearly 200 people she laid off.
I think we will need more, but the hope is that you bring back more jobs.
Hope is on the horizon for these restaurateurs, something that has eluded them for a year.
Once the relief fund passed, I think that was the first good night's sleep I had since the pandemic started.
Hopeful for the first time in a long time, to be honest with you. You work your whole life for opportunities like this. It's been such a roller coaster of emotions for us.
And that was Vanessa Yurkovich reporting. More than half of parents say they are planning to get their children a COVID-19 vaccine. That's according to an Axios Ipsos poll released today. It found that 52% of moms and dads will get their kids vaccinated when one becomes available for their age group. The poll found that Republicans are most resistant to having their child vaccinated. Almost half of respondents said they had gotten at least 1 dose. And once you get your first dose of the coronavirus vaccine, you'll be issued a card. And as Danny Romero reports, you'll want to hold on to it.
It's pretty thick, thicker than probably about as thick as a business card.
What Caroline Montalvo is talking about, of course, is her COVID vaccination card. It was given to her after she was vaccinated.
I'm probably just going to put it in my wallet, have it available.
But for John Olson, he has bigger plans.
I think we should frame them, don't you think?
Some people are thinking about preserving vaccination cards by laminating them. But should you?
Put the original in a safe place, but take a picture of this and maybe laminate that picture, cut it. But now let's save the original in case there's a question about it.
What if later on you need a booster shot and you already laminated your card?
If you do laminate your card and yet later there's a booster shot or some other similar vaccine that would be given, you would have to download a new card off the state website.
What you shouldn't do is post a picture of your card on social media.
Show your sticker that you've been vaccinated, but do not post that, because so many of those cards have personal information. It might have your birthday, the lot number. We don't want anyone stealing your information, impersonating you.
There's speculation proof of your vaccination could be needed to travel or to go to a concert in the future, but you don't need to be carrying that card with you now.
Take a picture of both the front and the back of it so you always have the card available. The card may be able to be used in many ways.
And that was Danny Romero reporting. A reminder, we have more information about how and where to get your shot at kpbs.org. Just go to our homepage and then click on the Vaccines tab. The Padres will be without one of its star players after a painful moment at the plate. Fans held their breath as Fernando Tatis Jr. left last night's game. The team says he's partially dislocated his left shoulder. And a short time ago, the team announced Tatis will take a couple of weeks out of action. There was concern he might need surgery, which might have caused him to miss the entire season. Major League Baseball's AllStar Game has a new home. The Midsummer Classic will be played in Denver at Coors Field, the home of the Colorado Rockies, and it's scheduled for July 13th. The announcement comes just a few days after the league pulled the event from Atlanta. Major League Baseball opposes a new Georgia law that makes it harder for some communities to vote.
I'm Judy Woodruff. Tonight on the NewsHour, the Biden agenda. The president moves up an already ambitious vaccine timetable. Coming up at 7 after Evening Edition on KPBS.
And here's another look at today's top story, a major announcement in our fight against COVID-19. Governor Gavin Newsom says if we stay the current course, nearly all restrictions will be lifted by June 15th. That is the target date for getting rid of the state's color-coded tier system. Starting tomorrow here in San Diego County, more restrictions on businesses and activities will be eased as we advance into the orange tier. You can find tonight's stories on our website, kpbs.org. Thanks for joining us. I'm Maya Trabulsi. Have a great evening.
Major funding for KPBS Evening Edition has been made possible in part by Anderson Plumbing, Heating and Air, proud to support the mission of KPBS and privileged to serve San Diego clients. Anderson Plumbing, Heating and Air, helping homeowners maintain drain, heating, and cooling systems since 1978. And by the Conrad Prebys Foundation, Darlene Marco Shiley, and by the following. And by viewers like you. Thank you.